You have been lied to since the moment you were old enough to understand the concept of value. Society, your education, the media, and perhaps even your own family have drilled a single, dangerous equation into your mind. They told you that money equals freedom. They told you that wealth equals respect. They promised you that if you could just accumulate enough numbers in a bank account, you would finally be safe, you would finally be powerful, and you would finally be in control. But look around you. Look closely at the world you live in. If money is power, why do lottery winners end up bankrupt and broken within a few years? If money is power, why do billionaires still fear public opinion? If money is power, why can a wealthy merchant be destroyed by a single signature from a politician or a single rumor started by a rival? The truth is much darker, and it is a truth Niccolo Machiavelli understood 500 years ago. While the rest of the world was distracted by gold, money is not power. Money is merely a form of energy, a resource, a tool. But power? Power is the ability to determine the outcome. Power is the ability to rewrite the rules that others must follow. Money is passive. It sits there, waiting to be spent, waiting to be stolen, waiting to be taxed. Power is active. It moves, it strikes, it defends. To mistake money for power is the most fatal error a man can make, because the moment you believe your wealth protects you is the moment you become truly vulnerable. Think of it this way. A man with $1 million, but no influence, is nothing more than a prey animal with a target painted on his back. He has resources that others want, but he lacks the mechanism to defend them. He is a fattened calf walking through a den of wolves, believing that his weight will earn him respect. But wolves do not respect the calf. They eat it. This is why you see so many people who get rich quickly. Athletes, entertainers, accidental heirs lose everything just as fast. They had the currency of commerce, but they lacked the currency of control. They thought the money made them kings, but in reality, it just made them visible to the people who actually run the game. Machiavelli warned us about this specific illusion. He spoke of princes who relied on mercenaries, soldiers who fought only for a paycheck. He said that any power built on money alone is fragile, unstable, and ultimately doomed. Why? Because money is transactional. If you pay a man to be loyal, he is loyal only until someone pays him more. If you buy a woman's affection, it lasts only as long as the gifts continue. If you purchase your status in society, it evaporates the moment your funds run dry. This is not power. This is rental. You are renting an illusion of authority, and the landlord can evict you at any time. True power, the kind that endures, the kind that shapes history and breaks wills, is not transactional. It is structural. It creates a reality where others have no choice but to serve your interests, not because you paid them, but because they have nowhere else to go. The ultimate currency is not the coin in your pocket. It is the dependence you create in the minds of others. When you understand this, your entire relationship with money changes. You stop seeing it as the goal. You stop hoarding it like a nervous squirrel preparing for winter. Instead, you start viewing money as ammunition. You realize that $1 unspent is wasted potential, not because you should buy luxury, but because you should be buying leverage. Most people spend their lives climbing the wrong mountain. They work themselves to the bone, sacrificing their health, their time, and their relationships to reach a specific net worth. They tell themselves, when I have this much, I will be the master. But when they get there, they find they are just as anxious, just as fearful, and just as controlled by others as they were when they were poor. They are just wealthier servants. They have better cages, softer chains, and more expensive distractions, but they are still reacting to the world instead of commanding it. The bank owns their debt, the market owns their attention, and society owns their reputation. They have mastered the accumulation of currency, but they are illiterate in the language of power. To escape this trap, you must undergo a fundamental shift in your psychology. You must stop asking, how can I make more money? And start asking, how can I increase my capacity to influence events? Sometimes, these two goals align. Often, they do not. There are times when the most powerful move is to lose money in the short term to gain a strategic advantage that will last a lifetime. There are times when refusing a payout gives you more dignity and terror than accepting it ever could. A man who can be bought has a price tag, and anything with a price tag is a commodity. Commodities are traded, used, and discarded. But a man who values power over profit, he is dangerous. He cannot be bribed because what he wants cannot be deposited in a bank. He wants control. He wants legacy. He wants the ability to look at a situation and bend it to his will. This is the state of mind you must cultivate if you wish to survive in a world of predators. You must realize that money is just the entry fee. It gets you into the room. It buys you the suit. It puts food on the table. But it does not give you a seat at the head of the table. That seat is reserved for those who understand human nature, those who know how to manipulate fear and desire, those who know that while everyone else is counting coins, the real players are moving the chess pieces. You must begin to see your bank account not as a scorecard of your success, but as a stockpile of fuel for your real objective. And that objective is to build a position so fortified, so essential, and so intimidating that money flows to you as a natural byproduct of your existence, rather than something you have to chase. The tragedy of the modern man is that he thinks he is a capitalist, but he is merely a consumer with a better credit line. He consumes status symbols, hoping they will transmit power. He buys the watch to show he has time. He buys the car to show he has drive. He buys the house to show he has stability. But Machiavelli would look at this display and laugh. He would tell you that if you have to show off your wealth to prove you are powerful, you have already admitted that you are not, because power does not need to advertise. Gravity does not need to tell you it is there. You feel it pulling you down. The sun does not need to announce its heat. You burn if you get too close. Real power is felt before it is seen. It is an atmosphere, a weight, a presence that enters the room before you do. And you cannot buy that at a dealership. You have to build it, brick by brick, using the mortar of psychology, strategy, and absolute self-control. This is where the journey begins, not in the accumulation of assets, but in the accumulation of the self. To accumulate the self means to realize that your value in this world is not measured by what you can buy, but by what you can withhold. This brings us to the mechanics of conversion, the dark alchemy of turning cold, dead cash into living, breathing authority. Most people never make this transition. They stay in the realm of arithmetic, believing that if they just add more zeros to their net worth, the world will bend to them. But the world does not bend to arithmetic, it bends to necessity. Machiavelli taught that men are wretched creatures who will break their promises to you when it suits them, but they will never break their need for you if their survival depends on it. Therefore, the first step in converting money into power is to stop purchasing objects and start purchasing dependencies. When you spend money, do not ask what this object will do for me. Ask, who does this transaction make dependent on me? If you buy a luxury car, you have made yourself dependent on the mechanic, the insurer, and the manufacturer. You have drained your power to look rich. But if you use that same money to buy the supplier that your competitor relies on, or to acquire the debt of a man who has political influence, or to secure the only piece of land that a developer needs to complete a project, you have purchased power. You have created a choke point. In the first scenario, the money is gone, replaced by metal and rubber that depreciates. In the second scenario, the money has been transformed into a lever that can move mountains. The car makes you look successful. The lever makes you dangerous. This is the distinction between ownership and control. You do not need to own the world to rule it. You only need to control the bottlenecks. The man who owns the river is powerful, but the man who can poison the water or build the dam is the one who dictates terms. You must learn to look at your financial resources not as a way to exit the struggle, but as a way to dominate the terrain. Every dollar you have is a soldier. If you leave your soldiers sitting in a vault, they grow fat and lazy, and eventually, inflation, the silent assassin, kills them in their sleep. But if you deploy them to capture strategic positions, to indebt others to you, to build systems that people cannot operate without, then your money becomes immortal. It stops being currency and starts being infrastructure. Consider the concept of the golden handcuff, but apply it not just to employees, but to everyone around you. Machiavelli knew that fear and love are the two primary motivators, but he also knew that love is fickle, while fear, specifically the fear of loss, is consistent. You must use your resources to construct an environment where people benefit from your presence, but fear your absence. If you are simply generous, if you just give money away to friends, family, or staff, you breed entitlement. They will come to expect your charity as a right. They will resent you when it stops. This is the mistake of the weak lottery winner who tries to buy love. The Machiavellian does not give, he invests. He places his resources in such a way that the recipient knows, deep in their bones, that their comfort, their status, and their future are entirely contingent upon your continued goodwill. You create a structure where their lifestyle is a branch, and you are the trunk. They can bloom, they can grow leaves, they can reach for the sun, but if they try to sever themselves from you, they wither. This is not cruelty, this is gravity. It is the physics of human relationships. By establishing this dynamic, you ensure loyalty not through affection, which can be faked, but through self-preservation, which is always sincere. When someone knows that crossing you means financial or social suicide, you do not need to raise your voice. You do not need to make threats. Your silence becomes heavy. Your disapproval becomes a crisis. This is the state of existence where money has transcended its physical form and become pure psychological pressure. Furthermore, you must understand that power thrives in the dark, while money is often forced into the light. Society demands transparency from the wealthy. They want to see your taxes, your earnings, your spending. But power requires opacity. The moment everyone knows exactly what you are worth and where your assets are located, they can calculate exactly how much force is needed to break you. They can sue you for a specific amount. They can tax you. They can beg you for a specific percentage. To wield power, you must decouple your visible lifestyle from your actual capabilities. Look like you are surviving while you are secretly conquering. Let them think you are smaller than you are. Let them believe you are liquid when you are solid, and solid when you are liquid. This strategic deception allows you to navigate the world without triggering the immune system of the envious. If you flash your money, you trigger the jealousy of the mob and the scrutiny of the state. But if you cloak your money in complex systems, in companies within companies, in investments that carry no name, you become a ghost, and you cannot fight a ghost. You cannot rob a ghost. A ghost can walk through walls that stop living men. By keeping your true financial strength hidden, you reserve the element of surprise. When you finally decide to strike, whether to acquire a competitor, destroy an enemy, or seize an opportunity, they will not see it coming because they were looking at the decoy you built for them. They were looking at the illusion of your money while you were positioning the reality of your power. This invisibility is the ultimate luxury. It is the freedom to move through the world, unencumbered by the expectations and targets that plague the visibly rich. You are everywhere and nowhere, holding the strings while everyone else watches the puppets. Once you have established the infrastructure of dependence, you must master the currency that trades at a higher value than gold: psychological debt. This is the art of invisible manipulation. In the crude world of basic commerce, a debt is a number on a spreadsheet. It is sterile, defined, and easily discharged. You owe $1,000. You pay $1,000. The relationship is over. The slate is clean. But in the world of power, you never want the slate to be clean. A clean slate means you have lost your leverage. You want the ledger to remain open, bleeding, and undefined. You want people to walk around with a vague, gnawing sense that they owe you something they can never fully repay. This is how you bind a soul to your will. Machiavelli understood that the strongest chains are not made of iron, but of gratitude and guilt. When you pay a man a salary, he feels he has earned it. He trades his labor for your coin, and in his mind, you are equals in the transaction. He owes you nothing but the hours agreed upon. But when you give a man something he did not earn, something he did not expect, or something he desperately needed in a moment of crisis, you bypass his logic and hack directly into his emotions. You create a moral imbalance. You become his savior, his benefactor, the architect of his relief. And because this debt has no specific price tag, it has no expiration date. He cannot simply write a check to settle the score. He must repay you with loyalty, with information, with defense of your name when you are not in the room. To practice this, you must learn to weaponize generosity. Do not give to be liked. Being liked is a vanity metric for the insecure. Give to create obligation. When you see a potential ally or a useful pawn in distress, do not wait for them to beg. Begging is humiliating, and if you make a man humiliate himself, he will secretly hate you for witnessing his weakness. Instead, intervene before he asks. Solve the problem quietly, swiftly, and without demanding recognition. By removing the humiliation of asking, you double the weight of the gratitude. You have saved his dignity as well as his hide, and now he belongs to you. He will carry the memory of that moment like a stone in his pocket, a constant reminder that he exists in his current state only because you allowed it. However, the Machiavellian master knows that this dynamic requires maintenance. You must attach invisible strings to every favor. These strings are not demands. Demands trigger resistance. These strings are implications. It is the subtle understanding that your patronage is a privilege, not a right. You do not need to say, "I did this for you, so you must do this for me." That is the language of a gangster, not a prince. Instead, you simply let the weight of your favor hang in the air. You let them wonder how they can please you. You let them offer their services. When people volunteer their loyalty because they feel they ought to, their bond is infinitely stronger than if you had forced it. They convince themselves that serving you is their idea, their moral duty. You have not just controlled their actions, you have colonized their conscience. This leads to the discipline of silence. In a world that cannot stop screaming for attention, silence is the ultimate display of dominance. The weak are terrified of silence. They fill it with chatter, with explanations, with justifications. They reveal their plans, their insecurities, and their prices because they are uncomfortable with the void. But you must become comfortable with the void. You must learn to sit in a negotiation and say absolutely nothing. You must learn to deliver a command and offer no rationale. When you withhold words, you force others to project their own fears and desires onto you. They start to overthink. What is he thinking? Is he angry? Is he impressed? What does he know that I don't? In their scramble to interpret your silence, they will reveal everything. They will bid against themselves. They will offer more than they intended. They will apologize for sins you didn't even know they committed. Your silence acts as a vacuum, sucking the truth and power out of the room and into your hands. Money screams, wealth whispers, but power waits. By refusing to engage in the noise, you signal that you are above the fray. You signal that you do not need to convince anyone of anything. You are the immovable object around which everyone else must flow. And while you practice silence, you must also practice scarcity. The economic law of supply and demand applies to your presence, just as it applies to oil or diamonds. If you are always available, always visible, always accessible, your value plummets. You become common, but if your access is limited, if your approval is rare, if your time is guarded like a state secret, people will covet it. They will compete for the scraps of your attention. This competition is where you find your true leverage. When people have to fight to be near you, they value your proximity more than their own pride. They will adapt their behavior, censor their thoughts, and mold themselves into whatever shape pleases you, just to remain in the inner circle. This is the dark side of social gravity. You create an orbit where the closer someone gets to you, the colder it feels if they are pushed away. You use the fear of exclusion as a whip. You don't need to fire people. You just stop inviting them to the meeting. You don't need to yell at them. You just stop responding to their messages for a day. The sudden withdrawal of your warmth is more punishing than any physical blow. It triggers the primal fear of abandonment. In that panic, they will work twice as hard to regain your favor. They will repledge their loyalty. And in that moment, you know you have succeeded. You have not used money to buy their labor. You have used psychology to own their peace of mind. You have become the weather in their world, capable of bringing the sun or the storm at your whim, without ever explaining why. This is the architecture of a god, built on the frailties of men. And finally, we arrive at the summit of the mountain, the place where the air is thin and the truth is blinding. To truly possess power, you must master the one thing that controls money itself, your own detachment. This is the paradox that breaks the weak. To accumulate vast wealth, you must be obsessed with it. But to wield vast power, you must be willing to lose it all in a heartbeat. The moment you become afraid of losing your money, the moment you hesitate to make a move because it might cost you your comfort, you have ceased to be the master. You have become the servant. You have become the guard dog of your own prison, barking at shadows to protect a pile of gold that is slowly suffocating you. The ultimate Machiavellian move is the ability to walk away. In any negotiation, in any relationship, in any war, the person who cares the least is the person who holds the most cards. If you need the deal to survive, the other side can smell your desperation. They will squeeze you. They will extract concessions. They will humiliate you because they know you have no choice. But if you have structured your life and your mind in such a way that you can look at a pile of money and say, "I do not need this," you become terrifying. You become a force of nature that cannot be leveraged. You destroy their ability to manipulate you because you have removed the handle they intended to grab. This requires a profound internal shift. You must build an identity that is entirely separate from your net worth. The fool looks at the mirror and sees his bank account. If the market crashes, his self-worth crashes with it. He jumps from the window because without the numbers, he is zero. The master looks in the mirror and sees a strategist. If the market crashes, he sees chaos, and chaos is a ladder. He knows that his wealth was just a byproduct of his competence, not the source of it. He knows that if you stripped him naked and dropped him in a foreign city with nothing, he would be running the place within a year. Why? Because the asset is not the cash. The asset is the mind. The asset is the understanding of human nature, the discipline of silence, the architecture of dependence. These are things that cannot be taxed, stolen, or devalued by inflation. When you reach this level of understanding, money ceases to be a source of anxiety and becomes a simple mechanic of your will. You stop hoarding it for safety and start deploying it for effect. You realize that sometimes burning money is the most profitable thing you can do. You might overpay an employee to buy their undying loyalty, knowing that their devotion is worth 10 times the salary. You might walk away from a profitable contract to preserve your reputation for unpredictability. You might destroy an asset just to prove to your enemies that you are crazy enough to do it. These are moves that the purely greedy man can never make. His greed blinds him. It makes him predictable. And in the game of power, to be predictable is to be dead. So, return to the beginning. Ask yourself why you started this chase. Was it truly for freedom, or was it for safety? Because they are not the same thing. Safety is a cage with gold bars. Freedom is the ability to hunt in the open. Machiavelli did not write for the merchants who wanted to be safe. He wrote for the princes who wanted to be immortal. He understood that money is temporary. It rots. It changes hands. It loses value. But influence? The ability to shape the world, to mold the minds of others, to leave a legacy that echoes after you are gone, that is the only currency that defies time. Do not let the world fool you with its shiny objects. Do not let the illusion of luxury distract you from the reality of leverage. Let the others buy the toys. Let them post the photos. Let them scream about their success while they drown in debt and insecurity. You must play a different game, a quieter game, a longer game. You must build a fortress where money is just the mortar. But you, your will, your strategy, your cold and unyielding discipline are the stone. Remember this final truth. Money is a mirror. If you are weak, it will show the world your weakness. It will amplify your vices, your fears, and your stupidity. It will attract parasites who will drain you dry. But if you are strong, if you are centered, if you are a sovereign individual who commands respect, not because of what you own, but because of who you are, then money becomes a magnificent servant. It becomes the sword in your hand, the wind at your back, and the ink with which you write your name on history. But the sword is not the warrior, the wind is not the ship, and the ink is not the writer. You are the source. Stop serving the reflection, smash the mirror, and take control of the only empire that matters, yourself.